Gentlemen, in this video I want to talk a little bit about the sexual marketplace and our places in it. I'm going to hit you with something which is very difficult to hear, but it's true. As men, our sexual services are in low demand and very high supply. I want you to put yourself in a woman's shoes for a moment and think of things from her perspective. If a woman is young and beautiful, she has a very high demand from other men for her sexual services. She has incoming interest from so many men. Her sexual services are in very high demand and low supply, which is the exact opposite of your sexual market status. In fact, her sexual services are in such high demand and low supply that, unlike yourself, a price can be attached to her. That's where prostitution comes in. Now think about this. Why would a woman with high sexual market value have sex with you for free when she can have sex with many different men and get paid a lot of money? On dating sites like Tinder, you often see women say things like, "no one-night stands," or "no hookups." From her perspective, it doesn't make economic sense to have a one-night stand or hook up with men for free. In fact, hooking up with a man for free comes with very real costs, and this has a detrimental effect on her, specifically on her reputation, and reputation is very important for women. If she develops a reputation as a slut, i.e., a woman who gives sex away to men for free, other women will slut shame her because she is lowering the price of sex for other women, and she is very unlikely to be able to secure a long-term situation with a man, as men are essentially buyers of her reproductive capability, and this is negatively affected by having sex for free with many different men. Becoming a slut limits substantially her ability to get what she really wants from a man: his wealth, resources, status, and emotional support. It makes complete sense from a woman's perspective to not engage in short-term hookups on an unpaid basis. If she instead advertises herself as an escort, she can make money from men for performing sexual services in the short term, but this comes at the very real expense of the long term, as she will have limited or completely eliminated her ability to marry. So the opportunity cost of being a slut or escorting as a whore is high for a woman. Thus, the price of prostitution has to be high enough in the short term to compensate her for this long-term loss of wealth and resource provisioning from a man. Being a slut and giving away sex to men for free is unprofitable for a woman. In fact, it's an economic loss, hence the Tinder profiles, no one-night stands, no hookups. Interestingly, an observation I've made, maybe you have as well, but haven't thought about it much, if you've been to Pattaya or watched videos of the place on YouTube. Have you noticed how many of the female prostitutes will cover their faces when a guy whips out a camera in red light districts like Soi 6? Ever noticed a ladyboy or a male prostitute, perhaps in Boys Town, hide their faces from a camera? I haven't either, and there are very good reasons why. Ladyboys don't have the same opportunity cost of prostitution that a genetic woman does. A ladyboy does not have to worry about her reputation in the way that a genetic woman does. As men, we know intuitively that the ladyboys want sex just as much as we do. They know that we want sex, and they know that we are not going to marry them and won't be getting them pregnant anytime soon. So long-term resource provision from one man in exchange for access to reproduction is not a factor with them. They have to make hay while the sun shines, so to speak. After a certain age, they can no longer get money from men in exchange for sex. Genetic women are able to sell short-term non-reproductive sex or long-term reproductive sex. Both have a price. Just like the male prostitutes, the ladyboys can only sell short-term, non-reproductive sex. The covered faces of the genetic female prostitutes is evidence that the reputation risk is very high for them versus very low for the ladyboys and the male prostitutes. Getting back to genetic women, however, for a minute, there have been numerous examples of rich and famous men who have cheated on their wives and their wives have stuck by them. This too makes complete economic sense if you think about it. As a woman ages, she loses her youth, beauty, and physical attractiveness. She loses the ability to attract a high status, rich, and successful man. So sometimes her best choice economically is to stand by her man. She has to weigh up the economic outcomes of staying versus leaving. The leaving option will come with an economic payoff as well via divorce. And if this payment is enough, then that can compensate her for her much reduced ability to extract resources from a new man, given her new, much lower position in the sexual marketplace due to her loss of beauty and increased age. A newly divorced woman over 40 with children, for example, has to compete with younger, hotter, more attractive women without children. Rich, successful men will choose the younger woman almost every time, as youth and beauty for a woman is her signal to men that she is fertile. The man can provide her with his excess labour, which he very much needs, and she can provide him with her childbearing capability, which he himself completely lacks. Single mothers and older women on Tinder have a reputation as being easier than younger, childless women. There's no free lunches in life, gentlemen. These women have to be nicer as they come with age, baggage, and a much reduced, lower sexual market value. I think at the end of the day, we men need to come to terms with the fact that we all pay for sex in one way or another. In fact, it's when we don't pay for sex, when there is no obvious price attached to it, that we really need to worry about our wallets. Not paying for sex by the hour will become very expensive later, as many a married man has learned to his detriment. I have friends who have lost well over $500,000 in divorces. I want to try to avoid that outcome from my own life. I think the only way to do this is to put my ego aside and come to terms with the fact that all men, including myself, pay for sex in one way or another. All men, including myself, are in a position where our sexual services are in low demand and very high supply. Some men, the top, richest men, are able to be with incredibly young and beautiful women, but that doesn't change the fact that their sexual services are in low demand and very high supply. The young, beautiful women are not with these older men for their sexual services. These women can get paid for sex by younger, taller, fitter, more muscular, more attractive men anytime they want. I was having a look through Backpage today at the escort services, and looking through the ads reveals some interesting things. There are a lot of women advertising their escorting and sexual services in exchange for payment. The buyers of these services are men. There is a high demand from men for the sexual services of young, beautiful women. There is scarcity in the marketplace as there are only so many young and beautiful women advertising, and the price women can charge is relatively high. So we can extrapolate from this and make the observation that women's sexual services are in very high demand and low supply. There are a lot of transsexuals advertising their escorting and sexual services in exchange for payment as well. The buyers of these services are men. There is a high demand from men for the sexual services of young, beautiful transsexuals. There is scarcity in the marketplace, and there are only so many young and beautiful transsexuals advertising, and the price they can charge is high. So we can extrapolate from this and make the observation that transsexuals their sexual services are in very high demand and low supply, just like the females. I count as friends a number of ladyboys, some of whom are in Australia right now. Their phones never stop ringing and they are inundated with offers from men. I've had to ask one to please set her phone to silent when we're about to fuck. It was just ridiculous, the demand for her services. There are almost no advertisements from women advertising their sexual services towards other women in exchange for payment on Backpage. So we can conclude from this and make the observation that there is essentially no demand from women for sexual services from other women. What does that tell you about female nature, gentlemen? Think about it. Reflect upon the implications of this. There are some advertisements from men advertising their sexual services towards other men in exchange for payment. There is some demand from men for paid sex with other men, but this demand is low due to the fact that men can get sex from other men for free. Sex is man's primary interest. I'm going to leave you today with a story from the ABC News about Backpage.com. I think it says a lot about personal choices, the sexual marketplace, demand for youth and beauty, morality, who the buyers are, who the sellers are, government interference in the marketplace due to prohibition, the effect this has on prices, the criminal element that then steps in, media reaction, stigma of the industry, etc. There are 3 videos in the story. I encourage you to check them all out. Take particular note of the female lawyer working for Backpage. Despite her economic incentive and her bias given she works for Backpage, she has my respect as she can see the situation clearly and rationally. That's it from me today, gentlemen. Until next time, all the best. I'm the Pretender.